Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Brought to you by Junk Be Gone and the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source. Thank you for joining us today. We have a lot to discuss. Big win at Neyland Stadium yesterday, and Oklahoma State looked good doing it. I'm sorry. Tennessee was wearing their dark mode, all black uniforms. They absolutely took South Carolina to the woodshed. Hit it on coast in the second half a little bit, and that raised people's temperature a bit. We'll discuss all of that. But coming off a 45-20 win, should be a happy show today. Well, let's be honest, we're always happy and fun anyway. So let's get into this thing. First segment of our show is brought to you by the Garza Law Firm. So many ads for attorneys fill the airwaves now, and a lot of them here in Knoxville are for attorneys based in Memphis or Birmingham, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Folks, when you need an attorney, turn to the team right here in East Tennessee, Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm. They know the local courts, they know the local court system, they know the local people, and they know how to fight for you. GarzaLaw.com is where you can learn more. Go with an East Tennessean, go with one of your neighbors. That's Marcos Garza, Garza Law Firm. All right, let's welcome in today's panel. Will Overstreet isn't here, but we actually have a full house, and that is because, filling in for Will Overstreet, VFL Mike Stoll back with us. Mike, thanks for being here. Good to see you.
It's always great to be here.
Good to have you here. Jimmy Himes and Josh Ward from WNML. That would be 99.1 The Sports Animal. Gentlemen, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And VFL Marlon Wall's back with us. Marlon, thanks for coming back.
Man, I appreciate it.
We didn't scare you off after week one. That's good.
I'm excited about it. Let's get it.
All right, good deal. Friday on Sports Talk, Jimmy, you, me, and Will all made it clear that we didn't anticipate a beating like Tennessee put on Missouri. Carolina would play it closer. It would be a tougher game. We were clearly all wrong because they did come out and put a beating on South Carolina. Let's take a look at the numbers for Tennessee these last 2 weeks. And what I've done here, hitting their stride, I took out Tennessee Tech because I'm not going to count high school numbers, but the average of the offensive numbers for Bowling Green, Pitt, and Florida is on the left. On the right, you got their average against Missouri and South Carolina. Points per game basically doubled. Yards per game is up 150. Rush yards per game way up. Pass yards per game about the same. Turnovers per game way down. Penalties way down. Mike Stoll, I'll start with you since you're our special guest today. Tennessee, 4-2 at this point. The offense clicking. Are they in better shape than you anticipated?
Yeah, I think they're in a lot better shape. I think if you look at, especially over the last 2 weeks, you showed those numbers. I think they're figuring out the offense. They're understanding terminology. There's all sorts of different things you do when you come in and you got a new coach. You got to learn the system. You got to learn how the system works. I think also the last 2 weeks, who was the starting quarterback? Pretty much named the starting quarterback, right? Yeah. Hooker was a starting quarterback. He runs the system efficiently. He runs and understands it, and I think everybody's starting to gel and get a feel for it. So they're a lot better further along than they were, especially with what they have in the cupboard to work with.
I think the confidence level is also going through, especially with Hooker. But, guys, this team is better off than I thought clearly better than I thought it would be. I had them at 5-7 this year. So I think they'll get that one more win.
Maybe two.
Yeah, maybe a couple. Your thoughts on where this team is and how it's hitting its stride right now?
I'm not that surprised with the record. I thought the 50-50 games were Pitt and Missouri, and they split them, and I thought they'd win the others. But I'm surprised at how they got there. I didn't see them blowing out Missouri like that, and we'll be up 28-3 in the first quarter. They blew out South Carolina. They were up 28-0 in the first quarter. That's 56-3 in the first quarter of those two games. So how they got there, the running attack is better than I thought. With rare exception yesterday, the run defense has been better than I thought it would be. So I'm even more optimistic about what this team is capable of doing based on how they got to 4-2. Just not that surprised they're at 4-2.
Okay. Josh.
Yeah, in that graphic, the bottom two numbers, I believe, in those columns, they've cleaned up turnovers and penalties.
Which we made a big point of that going back and looking at Heupel's career, this is something to watch because he's got the penalties everywhere he's been. And as soon as we said it on this show, boy, they cleaned it up. Heupel was watching. He said, we don't want Jimmy Hyams mad at us.
That's right.
I mean, we should take all the credit, but
Most of it.
a fair percentage. But in these type games where maybe you have an advantage going in from a talent standpoint, but not a great one, if you're doing things right and the other team's screwing up and then your offense starts to click, which it seems to be, and I think players are confident in buying in, then you get this kind of gap in the result.
Most definitely. I knew we would score points. What I'm most excited about, or what took me aback, was I didn't know the defense would come along as fast as it has. We've gone against 2 SEC opponents, not very good, but at the same time SEC opponents. I knew he was going to score a lot of points. Didn't expect to score them as fast as we did, but defensively wise, that gives you a little something to be excited about and optimistic about going forward.
Yeah. Let me ask you, there were some rumbles yesterday when Tennessee, they came out in the second half. They had 4 drives that wound up with punts. I thought it was a little overblown because the first drive, it was 4th and 1. You picked up 9 yards. It was almost a first down.
Right.
2 of those other drives were sacks that killed the drive. 3 had sacks in them that killed the drives. It wasn't as bad as I had thought it was. That said, there was clearly a drop-off. Marlon, what do you put that to? Is that, look, players relax when you're up that big? Or is it coaches were starting to take the foot off the gas a little? Or South Carolina came out and was more aggressive with their press coverage. Right. You were texting me. Yeah. So what do you ascribe most of the downturn to there in the third quarter? What do you put the blame on?
I would say a little bit of guys getting relaxed. But at the same time, South Carolina came out and did some things a little different. They pressed up on us a little bit more with their coverage. DBs walked down on us, which they was able to give a little bit more blitzes on us, right? Whenever you're walking your coverage down, you can bring a little bit more fire zone blitzes. So I attribute to that. But at the same time, as a player, it's hard to maintain that intensity for an entirety of the game, especially when you're up big the way we were in the first half.
I thought the telling comment was after the game when Josh Heupel said, well, I chose not to put Tyon Evans back in there. We didn't want to risk it. There were a lot of people that felt like apparently they're going to come back and beat you. You're not, and I didn't think that thing was ever in question. Now, if it's Ole Miss and a better offense, okay, maybe. But South Carolina could have been out there for another 2 days and not scored 45 points.
I thought, and even the players acknowledged that they relaxed a little bit. I think that's easy to do when you're up by that margin. But they could have also relaxed at Missouri and you wouldn't have known it because Missouri quit. South Carolina didn't. And I thought that was a big difference. You saw effort from South Carolina. You didn't really see it from Missouri.
Yeah, I think you also saw that things that we better prepare for because Ole Miss is going to look at that second half tape and they're going to blitz a lot. All right, so the offensive line's got to get better in picking up the blitzes and handling those things with their pass protection. I mean, you look at one of those was a fake punt that they had a short score and a short field on. The one thing is, I think that the players are going to have to just continue to adjust and get used to, different schemes. And I think they went out, they ran their offense in the first, they adjusted, South Carolina did, and Tennessee's offensive line didn't pick up some of the blitzes and some of the pressures as well, creating the sacks.
The press coverage thing is a concern because we saw issues with that earlier in the year, and the fact that South Carolina came back and had some success with it yesterday in the second half. I don't know that Ole Miss has the deep. You're right, Tennessee needs to be prepared because Ole Miss is going to try and do what they saw. I don't know that they've got a defense that can pull it off, but you're going to face some defenses, Kentucky, Georgia, and Alabama, except for last night, that are going to be able to press you and press your receivers.
Yeah, they have players. So that's where we really see where this offense is for Tennessee in terms of what it will ultimately do against the best teams. I don't think this week is that test. Ole Miss's defense has all kinds of problems. We'll talk about that game. But, yeah, later in the season we'll get an idea. But Tennessee also, they still have room to grow, I'm sure they believe, on the offensive side.
And I think also you got to win your one-on-one matchups going forward. You're going to get pressed. The receivers are going to understand that, especially watching the South Carolina tape the second half, guys walking down it on us, we're having a little bit of trouble with it. You've got to win your one-on-one matchups.
I remember I was thinking yesterday, and I was getting texts from buddies, parent, and everything, worried about the comeback there. And I'm like, Tennessee once fell behind to Steve Spurrier 35-0 at the half. And they came back, had a great second half, as Steve Spurrier just handed the ball off in 8 o'clock. And the final score was 35-29. And I remember everyone around here saying, if we just had 5 more minutes. Well, you don't get 5 more minutes. And the final in that game was another Florida win, and everybody says Peyton Manning never beat Florida. The object is to win the game. Obviously, you don't want to have a 38-0 lead and then win it 38-37. But being up 38-7 and winning 45-20 is nothing to be upset about. You lost the second half 13-7, lost it. To me, I was surprised at how overblown the reaction was to the little bit of a downturn.
Yeah.
there
No,
in the second half.
the spread may have been in doubt for a little while there. That
the
was
spread's
something-
not
but the score itself, I don't think so.
All right. Can Josh Heupel's offense milk clock when necessary? We'll discuss that next. And also, who gets credit for Hendon Hooker's better passing numbers? Do you give the credit to the player? Do you give the credit to the scheme? We'll make these guys decide, and no one can say 50-50. Come on back on the Sports Source. We'll discuss.